Welcome to Cultural Conversations with the Mississippi State University Libraries. I'm your host, Fred Smith. My guest today is Jessica Perkins Smith, the Special Collections Manuscript Librarian. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Jessica, tell us what a manuscript librarian does. What are your duties?
Well, a little bit of everything. One of my main duties is processing collections. So our manuscript collections at Mississippi State run the gamut from family papers to plantation papers. We have a lot of letters, 19th and 20th century documents, all kinds of anything manuscripts. We deal with photographs. So I process collections, write finding aids, assist researchers in their research, undergraduate, graduate students, faculty, outside researchers, and I also put together exhibits, so it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah, you do have a lot of different tasks to do, don't you? Well, today you've brought one of probably the most diverse and eclectic collections in the manuscript division, and it's a collection that was donated by Dr. Todd Herring from Starkville. Tell us a little bit about Dr. Herring.
Okay, well, Dr. Herring, like you said, is from Starkville and graduated from Mississippi State. Both his undergrad and doctoral degrees in history were from Mississippi State. And he started collecting, from what I can figure, when he was 10 or 11 years old, and has collected his whole life. And his collection runs from, it's very heavy in 19th century Natchez and slavery materials, plantation letters about life in New Orleans and life in the Southeast in general, but he also has traveled a lot. So he has a lot of European manuscripts. He has a fair amount of colonial American manuscripts, a fair amount of artifacts, just a little bit of everything. And we use Dr. Herring's collection frequently with our classes because pretty much any subject we can find something from Dr. Herring's collection.
Yeah, it's an amazing collection, and it really covers a lot of early Mississippi period territorial and but also, you know, European, and which is one of the things that we don't have a lot of. You brought us some show and tell today, and show us some of the things that are in the collection.
Well, one of the first thing I'll pull out is this is the very first item that Dr. Herring ever bought, and he was about 10 or 11 years old in this is an 1861 document, and he bought it for $1. And this is a Mississippi document. It's a legal document from 1861, and that's all we really know about it. But this was his very first piece that he ever bought for $1, and I think he got the collecting bug.
He was hooked after that, yeah.
Yeah. The second thing that I have, I'll show you the cover and then I'll open it up. This is a passport from Francis Sergej of Natchez, who was a very wealthy planter and slaveholder. I think that we figured out at one point he owned over 10,000 slaves. And so this is his passport from, the date on this is 1851. I can show you all of the stamps. So he traveled all over the world, which was extremely rare and difficult to do in the 19th century, but there's stamps from all over the world. But the reason that we pull this item out for show and tell is because it is signed by the Secretary of State at the time, Daniel Webster. And so this is June of 1851, and this was Webster's second term as Secretary of State. And he shortly thereafter, he was running for president at the time, but he shortly after this got sick. He had cirrhosis of the liver and some other diseases, and so he died in October of 1852. And in looking, this is an authentic signature, and in doing some research on this, I found out that it was only a few months after this that he stopped being able to write his name at all, and his secretaries would have to sign his name. So this is a pretty cool piece.
Yeah, that's very rare. It's the only one of those I've ever seen.
Yeah. Okay, I'll put this right there. You've seen this one, Fred. This is a tavern license from 1813. in Natchez. And the cool thing about this is that this is a tavern that was owned, it was run out of a woman's home, a woman named Amy Johnson, and she was a free woman of color in Natchez. So here's her name, and licensed to a retailer of domestic spirits in a city, town, or village. The reason that we know a fair amount about Amy Johnson is that her son, William, wrote a diary about his life as a free man of color in Natchez. And it was discovered in, I think, around the 1930s by an archivist at LSU. Unfortunately, not an archivist from Mississippi
Yeah,
State.
LSU Press published it back in the 1950s. So.
And so in his diary, William Johnson talks about his life as a free man of color in Natchez in the very early 19th century. And he writes a lot about his mother, and she caused him apparently a lot of trouble. So she would get into fights, drunken fights in the street. And so this is an example. We will pull out this piece often to show with William Johnson's Natchez.
There's actually
These
a
kinda go
biography
hand
of
in
him called The Barber of Natchez.
Right. Yep. So this is a pretty neat piece, and you don't see very many pieces like this of black business owners from the early 19th century. So
No, I'm sure that's very
especially
rare.
a woman. Yes. Okay. I'm going to I'll pull one more Natchez item, and this is an 1827 advertisement for an auction at the Hotel Under the Hill at Natchez. And I like this because I think shortly after I came to work at Mississippi State, I went to Natchez for the first time and saw Natchez Under the Hill. And it's a beautiful location. And this is, I can pull this out and show that how the great quality of the paper, that it's still so intact, and it's over 150 years old.
It's still early printing in Mississippi, because Mississippi had only been a state for 10 years at that point.
Another thing that Dr. Herrings' collection is rich in is the bill of sale for slaves. We have quite a few of these items, and this is another 1827 item for this one is out of New Orleans, but this is for the sale of 5 slaves for the cost of $2,375 to a man named Abraham White. These slaves were bought and sold in New Orleans and taken to Natchez. So we have quite a few of these in the Herring collection and in other collections as well. And the neat thing about bills of sale for slaves is that they can, if you have enough information about them, they can be used for genealogy purposes. So that's one of the reasons we've had some families come in and use some of our bills of sale for slaves for doing their own family genealogy.
Well, he was lucky in that he started buying things over 30 years ago when you could find things like this, and they're awfully hard to find now.
Yeah. Okay. So now I'm gonna I'll pull one more from early 19th century Mississippi, and this is a letter from a man in Alexandria, Louisiana, to his sister. Sorry, this isn't the one that I pulled to his sister. This is from a man in Alexandria to a slaveholder, telling him, this is an 1820 letter, telling him that this guy's slave ran away and ran to this man's house and told this guy about his horrible treatment. And he talks about how tells this slaveholder, "You've treated your slave barbarically," but in this letter is telling him that he's going to come back. He's bringing the slave back to him, and then they'll discuss it more. But he talks in kind of in graphic detail about the treatment of the slave. So there's a lot of rich history in these letters, a lot of information about the reality of the 19th century South. So this is an
Yeah,
example
that's
of
got
that.
wonderful content.
Another thing that we use these letters for, no matter the content in manuscripts, is to show students what 19th century handwriting looked like. So we will pull out these letters. A lot of students have trouble reading cursive.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
And we've worked with our student workers in helping them learn how to read cursive so they can help transcribe these letters. So there's a lot of different uses for these.
Okay, we've got time for probably one more. Pick out your favorite.
One more item. Okay. Fast. Well, I'll pull the oldest item to show you an example of Herrings collecting, how broad his collection spans. This is the oldest piece in his collection from 1496, and this is a letter from the Dalmatian coast of Croatia. And as far as we can tell, it's in a dialect called a Ligurian dialect called Genoese from northern Italy. So this was a letter about trade, as far as we can tell. We don't have anyone that can read this dialect, but this is the oldest piece in his collection, and also you can see the quality of the paper.
That's part of the eclectic part of the collection, is that it's so broad and encompasses all sorts of countries that you wouldn't normally have a document from.
Right.
Well, show us one more. I think we've got just enough
One
time
more?
to take a look at another piece.
This last piece is a Mississippi document, a little later, early 20th century, Jackson College, which is now Jackson State University. And this is a Jackson College catalog from 1908, and it's pretty rare, and this one's in really good condition, and I like it because there's photographs of student life. This is the graduating class of Jackson College in 1909, and Dr. Herring's collection has a lot of older student and college catalogs.
Yeah, that would be extremely rare. I've never seen anything quite like that for Jackson College.
I haven't found any other ones in Mississippi. I think we may have the only one.
Well, Jessica, I appreciate you being my guest and
Thanks
bringing
for
all
having me.
these treasures, and we'll have to have you back again. And I'd like to thank you for watching Cultural Conversations from the Mississippi State University Libraries, and I hope we'll see you again soon.